The door slammed so hard it rattled the old window panes. Anjali didn't move. She stood barefoot on the cold kitchen tiles, one hand still holding the tea mug she had prepared for him, steam curling into the empty space he had just walked out of. Her husband, Raghav, was gone. For good this time. There was no shouting. No begging. No final glance. Only that loud slam and the silence it left behind. A silence louder than any scream. It had started like any other morning. But now, the love of her life, the man she built her dreams around, had walked out to be with another woman, Meera, the wealthy businesswoman he'd secretly been seeing for months. Anjali's hands trembled as she set the mug down. She didn't cry. Not yet. Maybe the shock was still sinking in. The kitchen smelled of cardamom and crushed dreams. Outside, the world went on. Inside, everything had stopped. 2 hours later, she sat on the floor beside their bed, no, her bed now. She clutched the wedding photo they once hung proudly in the hallway. Their smiles looked like lies now. She whispered to the photo, "Why wasn't I enough?" They'd struggled for years. Rent was always late. Some days, dinner was just rice and salt. But Anjali never complained. She loved him. Believed in him. And when he lost job after job, she took tailoring work at home just to keep things going. Then came Meera. Owner of a luxury fashion brand. Twice divorced. No kids. Rich beyond imagination. Raghav met her at a networking event. He came home that night glowing. He said she was inspired by his ideas, that she wanted to invest in his talent. Anjali had cooked aloo parathas that night. He barely touched them. Within weeks, he was coming home late, then sleeping on the couch, then not coming home at all. Last night, he'd finally said it. "I'm done, Anjali. I can't do this middle-class struggle anymore. Meera is giving me a life we'll never have here. And I deserve that life. Not we. Just he." And now, he was gone. That evening, the neighbors pretended not to notice. No one knocked. No one asked if she was okay. Word had already spread, Raghav left her for that rich woman. Small towns never kept secrets. Anjali went about her routine like a ghost. Folded clothes. Heated leftovers. Sat in silence. Until something strange happened. A knock. Gentle, hesitant. She opened the door slowly. It was a boy, barely 12, holding an envelope. "For you, Auntie," he said, handing it over. No name. No return address. Just a thick, beige envelope sealed shut. She looked around, but the boy had already disappeared into the crowd. She opened it, and found only one thing inside. A plane ticket. One way. To Mumbai. Departure, tomorrow morning. Name, Anjali Sharma. Her hands shook. Who had sent this? Why? She flipped the envelope again. Nothing. No message. No instructions. Just a ticket, and a feeling in her gut she couldn't explain. That night, Anjali couldn't sleep. Her heart was pounding. She kept staring at the ticket like it might whisper its secrets. Who would do this? Her family was poor, no one had money for a flight. She hadn't spoken to anyone from college in years. Raghav was the only person who'd ever promised her adventure, and he had just chosen someone else. Still, something about the ticket felt urgent. Intentional. At 5 a.m., before the first rays of sun touched the rooftops, she packed a small bag with just the basics, 3 sets of clothes, her tailoring scissors, and the wedding photo. She walked to the bus stop alone, wearing her plain blue kurta and old sandals. By 9:45 a.m., she was at the Mumbai airport gate, ticket in hand, still waiting for someone to stop her and say, it was a mistake. But no one did. Mumbai hit her like a wave. The noise. The chaos. The glittering glass buildings. The smell of street food and petrol. It was nothing like her small town. She stepped outside the terminal, squinting in the harsh sunlight. That's when she saw him. A driver holding a sign. Mrs. Anjali Sharma, welcome. She walked up cautiously. Who sent you? The man gave a small smile. I'm only here to take you to your destination, ma'am. That's all I know. She considered turning around. But her feet moved on their own. The car door opened. And in moments, she was driving past skyscrapers and slums, past billboards for luxury watches and faces of Bollywood stars. 30 minutes later, they arrived at a quiet bungalow tucked in a green lane, old, charming, unlike the modern towers around it. The driver pointed. They're waiting inside. They? Her heart thumped as she stepped through the gate and rang the bell. The door opened. And there stood an elderly woman in a crisp white sari, her eyes piercing and calm. You must be Anjali, the woman said. Yes, but, who are you? The woman smiled faintly. I'm someone who once lost everything. Just like you. Come inside, we have work to do. Inside, the house smelled of incense and jasmine. The woman led her to a room filled with fabrics, silks, cottons, embroidery threads. It looked like a fashion studio. Anjali blinked in disbelief. The woman turned to her. Do you believe in second chances, child? Anjali swallowed hard. I don't know. Well, I do, the woman said. And yours begins now. Before Anjali could ask more, the woman handed her a sketchbook. I've seen your designs. You're stitching. You're talented. Someone sent them to me anonymously. I want to train you. Mentor you. But you must commit completely. Anjali stared at her. Someone had sent her designs? Who? Raghav never even believed in her dream. He called her hobby a waste of thread. And now, a stranger was offering her a way forward? It felt surreal. But it also felt right. I don't even know your name, Anjali whispered. The woman smiled again, more warmly this time. Call me Devika. That's all you need to know, for now. Over the next few days, Anjali worked like a woman possessed. Cutting, stitching, designing. She learned embroidery techniques, fabric science, color theory. Devika was strict but kind, often silent but always observing. You feel pain in your stitches, Devika said one day. That's good. That's where the magic begins. The designs Anjali created had a raw beauty to them, imperfect but real. Her hands moved faster than her thoughts. One evening, as she packed up, she noticed a photo on the wall half hidden behind an old sari. She pulled the cloth aside. It was a photo of Devika and Mira. Together. Smiling. Her blood froze. Was Devika related to Mira? Before she could ask, Devika appeared behind her. Her face unreadable. You were never supposed to see that, she said softly. Anjali's voice trembled. Why is Mira in your photo? Devika looked away. Because once, she was like a daughter to me. Anjali stood frozen, her eyes locked on the photograph. It was Devika. Undoubtedly younger, but unmistakable, standing beside Mira, the very woman who had destroyed her marriage. Their arms were wrapped around each other like family, smiling under a bright blue sky. Her breath caught in her throat. You were never supposed to see that, Devika repeated, quieter this time. Anjali turned slowly. She was like a daughter to you? Devika stepped forward, took the photo down, and ran her fingers over the dusty frame. Yes, she said, her voice heavy with something unspoken. I raised her from the age of 7. Anjali blinked. You raised Mira? Devika nodded, walking to the window and pulling back the curtain. Outside, the sky was turning golden with the evening sun. She was my late brother's child. Her mother passed away when Mira was 4. Her father followed 3 years later. I had no children of my own. So, she became mine. A wild, brilliant child, sharp as a blade and soft as silk, until the world changed her. Anjali's mind raced. Why didn't you tell me? Devika turned to face her. Would you have stayed if I did? The silence stretched between them like a thin thread threatening to snap. I don't know, Anjali admitted. Devika sighed, setting the photo face down on a nearby shelf. Mira and I haven't spoken in years. Not since she chose a life of wealth over truth. But when your designs were sent to me anonymously, I recognized something familiar. Something raw. Something honest. I didn't know it was you, not at first. Anjali sat down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Then who sent them? Devika shook her head. I still don't know. That night, Anjali couldn't sleep. The room felt colder. Her memories of Raghav and Mira twisted and replayed in her mind like broken film. She walked to the studio quietly and picked up one of her recent embroidery pieces, a simple scarf with lotus blooms. It was beautiful, but it didn't feel enough anymore. If Devika was once family to Mira, then what was this? A trap? A test? A chance? And who sent those designs to Devika? Could it be Raghav, trying to ease his guilt? No. That man couldn't even say sorry. She stared at the sketchbook. A strange fire burned in her chest. I'll stay, she thought. Not for revenge. But because something in me is waking up. And I need to see where it leads. The next morning, Devika barely spoke. She handed Anjali a new challenge: design a dress that tells your story. No instructions? Anjali asked. Devika shook her head. Only your pain. Use that. And your courage. Anjali worked all day. The sketch came first, a simple silhouette, but layered. She chose fabrics with meaning. The base layer, raw, unbleached cotton to represent her roots. The middle, torn lace stitched back together with red thread, symbolizing her broken marriage and healing. And the top layer, shimmering blue silk embroidered with rising birds. It wasn't just a dress. It was her. Devika saw it and said only one word: powerful. 2 weeks passed. Then 3. Anjali trained harder than ever, learning draping, pleating, even marketing. Devika introduced her to seamstresses, designers, stylists. Yet behind every compliment was a mystery. Who had opened this door for her? And why? Then one afternoon, as she was organizing fabrics, Devika entered holding a tablet. There's something you need to see, she said, handing it to Anjali. On the screen was a video clip. It was Mira, on stage at a fashion event. Poised. Elegant. Speaking to a crowd. We are always searching for something real in fashion. Something with a story. Our next showcase will feature new talent, someone whose work made me feel something for the first time in years. I won't reveal her name yet. But you'll know her soon. Anjali's heart stopped. She's talking about me, she whispered. Devika nodded grimly. She's using your designs. Claiming to introduce you, but making herself look like the mentor. Anjali's voice shook. She's trying to own my story. She always did have a talent for turning truth into spectacle, Devika said. But you still have one weapon, your voice. 3 days later, Anjali was invited to an exclusive industry mixer at a high-rise hotel. It was short notice. Mira had added her name to the guest list. Anjali wanted to say no. But Devika looked her in the eye. "Face her," she said. "Let her see what she left behind. Let the world see it too." So Anjali dressed in her story dress. She tied her hair back simply, wore no jewelry, and carried her sketchbook under one arm. She stepped into the marble lobby, heart pounding. Everything glittered: lights, glasses, people. It smelled of expensive perfume and power. And then, she saw him. Raghav. Standing by the bar, wearing a designer blazer and holding a glass of wine, laughing at something Mira whispered in his ear. He turned, and saw her. His smile faltered. Mira turned too. For a split second, their eyes locked. Anjali didn't look away. Mira approached first, drink in hand, voice smooth as satin. "Well. The mystery guest arrives," she said. "I must admit, you wear your sorrow well." Anjali's spine straightened. "And you wear your lies better." A few heads turned. Whispers buzzed. Mira's smile didn't fade. "Let's not be dramatic, darling. This is business. And I'm giving you a stage." "You're giving yourself a narrative," Anjali said calmly. "One you didn't earn." Raghav stepped closer, trying to mediate. "Anjali, let's not do this here." She ignored him completely. "You think you made me. But you didn't. You broke me. And I rebuilt myself." Then, quietly, she opened her sketchbook and handed it to the event organizer nearby. "These are my designs. My work. If they go on your runway, I want it under my name. No cover stories. No sponsors. Just truth." The organizer, a woman in her 50s, glanced at the sketches, flipping pages. Her brows rose slightly. She looked at Anjali. "Are you prepared to stand behind this, fully?" Anjali nodded. "With everything I have." There was a beat of silence. Then the woman said, "Then let's talk. Privately." Back at the house that night, Anjali's emotions were a storm. She stood on the terrace, the city lights stretching around her like a galaxy. Devika walked up beside her. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked. Anjali looked up at the stars. "No," she whispered. "But I found something else. I'm not afraid anymore." Devika smiled. "Good. Then you're ready for what comes next." The next morning, an envelope arrived at the house. Hand-delivered. Inside was a single letter. From Mira. "You want credit? Fine. Take it. But don't forget, this world is crueler than any heartbreak. They'll love you now. But the moment you fail, they'll forget your name. Let's see how far truth takes you." Anjali folded the letter and set it aside. She opened her notebook, picked up a pen, and wrote one word on the first page of her next collection. Resilience. But just when things seemed to be settling, something strange happened again. The same boy who brought her the plane ticket weeks ago appeared outside Devika's gate. Only this time, he carried not an envelope, but a small, plain wooden box. He handed it to her and left without a word. Anjali opened it. Inside was a bundle of old photographs, a torn diary, and one page marked in red. She picked up the page and read just one line. "The truth about Mira is deeper than betrayal. It begins in blood." She looked at Devika in alarm. Devika's face went pale. "Where did this come from?" she whispered. Anjali held up the box. "I think," she said slowly, "someone wants us to know something." Devika's hands trembled as she picked up the diary. "We were wrong," she murmured. "This isn't just about you, or Mira." Anjali's voice was barely audible. "Then what is it about?" Devika looked at her, eyes wide with something between fear and revelation. It's about a secret that someone was willing to bury for decades. And now, it's coming back. The diary smelled old, like forgotten pages and buried secrets. Anjali held it gently, as if it might crumble. Its leather cover was cracked, and the corners bent like someone had opened and closed it 1,000 times over the years. But it wasn't the book itself that unsettled her. It was what Devika had said after reading just one page. This isn't just about you, or Mira. It's about a secret someone buried for decades. And now, it's coming back. Anjali watched as Devika flipped through the diary with trembling fingers. Her face had gone pale, and her breath shallow. Tell me, Anjali said softly, what are you seeing? Devika didn't look up. She turned to a dog-eared page and began reading aloud. July 14th, she's not mine, but they made me swear she would be. The blood isn't hers either. Not really. But it's on her hands now. She looked up at Anjali slowly. This, handwriting. It's my brother's. Anjali frowned. Mira's father? Devika nodded. But I thought he died when she was 7. Devika whispered, that's what we were told. Anjali sat down, her knees weak. Are you saying, he didn't die? No, Devika said. I'm saying he was hiding something. Something dark. For the next hour, they read through the diary, page after page of scattered thoughts, codes, initials, and references to names neither of them recognized. But again and again, one name appeared. NC. Next to it, phrases like, NC knows. She always knew. But the deal was made. NC kept the girl safe, but silence has its price. One day she'll want the truth. I won't be there to stop it. Who's NC? Anjali asked. Devika stared at the initials for a long time. Neelam Chaudhary, she whispered. Our old neighbor. She was a midwife. Quiet woman. Moved away years ago. I haven't heard her name in decades. Anjali's heart thudded. And what deal? What truth? Devika turned to the last page in the diary. There, written in ink that had almost faded, were the words. The child wasn't born to us. She was hidden with us. What happened that night in Dariba Gali, no one can ever know. The next morning, Anjali packed a small bag and looked at Devika. We're going to Dariba Gali. Devika hesitated. It's been over 30 years. That neighborhood has changed. And Neelam may not even be alive. Then we'll find who lives there now, Anjali said. Somebody knows something. They took an early train out of the city, the landscapes turning from tall buildings to winding streets of Old Delhi. Dariba Gali was once a famous jewelry district. Now it was half-forgotten, dusty, tight-laned, crowded with shops selling trinkets that once held real value. They found the old building. It leaned slightly to one side. The paint peeled like sunburnt skin. The iron gate creaked as they entered. Devika stood before the door, frozen. I used to come here every Sunday, she said softly. Neelam always made sweet tea. A boy answered the knock. He was about 12, eyes wide with curiosity. Is Neelam Chaudhary here? Anjali asked. The boy yelled into the house. Moments later, a woman in her 70s stepped out. Her hair was white, her shoulders stooped, but her eyes, sharp as ever. Devika? She asked, shocked. Devika nodded. Neelam stepped forward and hugged her without another word. Over tea, the room thick with silence, Devika finally asked, what happened in Dariba Gali all those years ago? Neelam looked between them and sighed. So the past has come for you too. She reached under her chair and pulled out a metal tin. From it, she took a photograph, faded but clear. It showed two babies, one swaddled in blue, the other in white. Both were held by women in hospital gowns. That night, Neelam began, a woman came to me. She was bleeding. Frantic. She said she'd escaped something terrible. She had a newborn. The father was someone powerful. Dangerous. She couldn't keep the baby. She begged me to take her somewhere safe. Somewhere hidden. Devika stared. That baby, was Mira? Neelam nodded. Your brother agreed to take the child in. No papers. No questions. The baby's identity was rewritten. But he never told you. He thought protecting you meant keeping you in the dark. Anjali leaned forward. But why did Mira never know? She was told early on, Neelam said. But she was too young to understand. When she grew older, she used it. Turned it into something else. Something cold. Devika asked quietly, do you know who the real parents were? Neelam hesitated, then nodded. The father was a politician. Big name. Still active. The mother, his mistress. She vanished after that night. Anjali sat back, stunned. So Mira is the child of power and scandal. Devika whispered, and she never belonged to us, not by blood. Neelam added, but by pain, she did. On the train ride home, Anjali stared out the window. So all this time, Mira was hiding this truth. Maybe even from herself, Devika said. Or maybe, it became her armor. What will you do now? Anjali asked. I don't know, Devika said. But if this story ever comes out, it won't just ruin her. It'll shake everything. They sat in silence for a long while. Then Anjali said, maybe that's why she's been trying so hard to stay ahead of me. She feels the past catching up. Back in the city, the air was thick with monsoon heat. Devika headed home, exhausted. Anjali returned to the studio and found a new envelope waiting for her. No return address. No name. Inside was a legal document, a printed contract. From Mira's company. It read. We offer you the lead designer position under Mira Kapoor's mentorship. All designs and future works will be co-owned by the label. Non-disclosure required. Immediate effect. Anjali stared at it in disbelief. She was trying to buy her silence. Just then, her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Mira's voice came through, sharp and calm. You've seen the contract. I suggest you sign. You'll have money, fame, security. And I'll have control over how much of your story gets told. It's the best you'll ever get. Anjali stayed silent. Mira continued, you really think people care about the truth? They care about stories. I tell them better. You? You're still the poor girl with thread and fire in her hands. Anjali's voice was steady. Then let them see the fire. And she hung up. The next day, the fashion show roster was announced. Anjali's name was there, officially and publicly. But not under Mira's label. It was listed as Anjali Kapoor, founder, Thread and Truth. Collection title, Born Twice. Social media buzzed with curiosity. Who was this new designer? Why was her name suddenly everywhere? And why did Mira Kapoor look nervous during every interview? The show was just a week away. And the past was coming closer. One night, Anjali couldn't sleep. She walked into the backyard and sat with her sketchbook, drawing by candlelight. She drew the two babies from the photo. She drew a woman bleeding in the dark, handing over a newborn to a stranger. She drew herself, standing in the middle of it all. When she looked up, Devika was there. I've decided, Devika said. I'm going to tell the press. The real story. The hidden past. Anjali shook her head. No. Let the runway speak first. Let the world see what truth looks like in silk and thread. Then, tell them. Devika hesitated, then smiled. You've grown stronger than I ever imagined. No, Anjali said. I've grown realer. But they didn't know. Meera wasn't done yet. 2 days before the show, Anjali's studio was broken into. Nothing was stolen, except one thing. The final dress from her collection. It was the centerpiece. The showstopper. Gone. The final dress was gone. Anjali stood in the middle of her studio, breath short, heart racing, eyes locked on the empty mannequin stand where her showstopper once hung like a crown. The dress wasn't just silk and stitching. It was the soul of her collection. The last story. The moment the world would hold its breath. And now, gone. Panic rose in her throat like smoke. Devika arrived 5 minutes later, breathless. I came as soon as I saw your text. They didn't touch anything else, Anjali said, pointing to the untouched sketches, fabrics, tools. They came for one thing. Devika stared at the empty stand. The final piece. Anjali nodded. The one with the secret hemline. The one that tells the truth. Devika knew what that meant. Anjali had designed a hidden message into the lining, delicately embroidered, invisible to the eye unless the dress was lifted at a certain angle under the right light. A whisper of words stitched in blood-red thread. I was hidden. But I remember. It wasn't a message from her. It was from the woman who had bled in the dark and handed over her child. From Meera's real mother. That dress had power. Not because of fashion, but because of truth. It was Meera's deepest fear and Anjali's boldest rebellion. Now it was gone. And there was only one person who could have taken it. Meera, Devika said bitterly. Anjali didn't respond. She simply turned, opened her locker, and pulled out her backup folder. It held patterns. Threads. Swatches. She said, we have 48 hours. Devika's eyes widened. You're going to remake it? I'm going to finish it, Anjali said, voice calm and cold, even if I have to sew through fire. The next 2 days blurred into a war of needles and nerves. Anjali didn't sleep. Didn't eat much. She stitched like a machine. But her hands moved like they had memories of every injustice she'd ever faced. When she stitched the hemline again, she paused over each letter. I, W, A, S, H, I, D, D, E, N, B, U, T, I, R, E, M, B, E, R. The thread tore once. She bled once. She cried once. But she didn't stop. By the day of the show, the collection was complete again. The models rehearsed. The lights were tested. Music cued. Backstage buzzed with nerves, makeup, and fake smiles. But the air shifted when Meera Kapoor entered. Flanked by assistants, photographers, and the scent of cold jasmine, Meera walked in like a queen returning to her stolen palace. She glanced at Anjali, who stood alone by her clothes rack, tired eyes sharp with defiance. So, Meera said softly, you really rebuilt it. Anjali didn't respond. Meera took a step closer. You should have taken the contract. I don't sell my past, Anjali said. Meera tilted her head. It's not your past. Anjali looked her in the eye. It is now. Minutes before the show began, Devika came rushing in, her face flushed. You won't believe this, she said. Look. She handed Anjali her phone. It was a news alert. Breaking, fashion icon Meera Kapoor accused of suppressing past adoption scandal. Leaked diary suggests political link. Anjali's breath caught. Who leaked this? Devika gave her a guilty smile. I did. I sent the scanned pages to a journalist friend this morning. I told her to hold off until just before the show. Anjali stared at her, stunned. Devika shrugged. You said wait until the world could see the truth. Now, they will. Anjali's knees nearly buckled. This was too real, too fast. The show hadn't even started. What happens now? She whispered. Devika's expression darkened. We watched the world catch fire. The music started. The audience, fashion critics, influencers, reporters, sat in neat rows, unaware that the biggest show tonight wasn't on the runway. It was in their news feeds. Backstage, Mira's face had paled. Her assistant whispered updates to her, her jaw tightening with every word. Anjali stood with her models, holding the final dress in her hands, ready. The curtain rose. And the show began. The collection moved like poetry. Each piece told a piece of a hidden story. A silk dress with torn edges, representing abandonment. A sari stitched with uneven threads, symbolizing secrets that don't line up. A jacket lined with mismatched buttons, each a different time, a different face. And then came the final piece. The dress. Anjali helped the model slip it on. Every stitch held breath. Every fold carried a ghost. The model stepped out. The spotlight found her. And the audience fell silent. It wasn't just the beauty of the dress. It was the message, the one that glowed faintly beneath the hem, caught in the right angle of light, visible only to the front row at first. Then, whispers spread. Phones came out. Zoomed in. People gasped. The words became clear. I was hidden. But I remember. Backstage, Mira stormed toward Anjali. You ruined me, she hissed. No, Anjali said quietly. You ruined yourself when you tried to bury someone else's life. Mira's voice cracked. You have no idea what it took to survive in this industry. What I did, what my parents did, was to protect me. And how many did you destroy to protect yourself? Anjali asked. How many truths did you stitch into silence? I gave you everything, Mira snapped. A platform. A name. No, Anjali said. You gave me betrayal. And I turned it into power. The show ended to standing ovations. Reporters surrounded Anjali. Flashes burst like fireworks. Questions flew like arrows. Is it true Mira Kapoor was involved in a hidden adoption? What does the embroidery mean? Was this show meant to expose someone? Are you the new voice of truth in fashion? Anjali didn't say much. She simply said, this isn't the end of a collection. It's the beginning of memory. That night, Mira Kapoor's name trended, for all the wrong reasons. Old political files were dug up. Her family's name appeared in leaked documents. Journalists connected the dots. By morning, the minister once rumored to be Mira's biological father had resigned. Devika watched the news with tired eyes and whispered, it's over. But Anjali wasn't smiling. It's not over, she said. It's just begun. 3 days later, Anjali received a letter. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a photo. A woman with a scar across her cheek, holding a baby wrapped in a torn sari. On the back, just one sentence. You told her story. But mine is still waiting. Anjali stared at it for a long time. The mystery hadn't ended. It had only grown deeper. The photo sat on Anjali's desk for 3 days. Every morning, she picked it up, stared at it, turned it over, read the line again. You told her story. But mine is still waiting. And every time, something in her chest tightened like a fist. The woman in the photo was no longer young. Her eyes had a tired wisdom, the kind that comes from years of silence. A faint scar ran across her left cheek, but it wasn't ugly, it was a mark of survival. The baby she held was tiny, wrapped in the same kind of fabric Anjali remembered from childhood. Faded. Torn. Barely enough to shield from the cold. But what held Anjali's gaze was the expression, a mix of fear and fierce love. She didn't need to be told. This was Mira's real mother. The woman who had given birth to her in secret. The woman who had been erased so Mira could grow up in silk and secrets. And now, this woman was calling out. Anjali didn't know how she had received the letter. It had no name, no sender. Just a date stamp on the envelope, Lucknow. That was her first clue. 3 days later, Anjali arrived in Lucknow with Devika. "I still can't believe you're doing this," Devika muttered, scanning the crowded station. "It could be dangerous. You've already humiliated Mira publicly. What if her people try to silence this woman too?" Anjali shook her head. If she wanted to stay hidden, she wouldn't have sent the photo. They checked into a small hotel in the old part of the city. Anjali laid out the photograph again, along with the envelope. "Look at the background," she said, pointing to the old temple wall behind the woman. "That carving. It's unique." Devika leaned in. "That's not a temple. That's a government hospital. I've seen that pattern before. It's on the maternity ward walls." Hope flared in Anjali's chest. "That's how we'll find her." The next morning, they visited the public hospital records office. It was a maze of dusty files and suspicious clerks. Anjali walked up to the counter and said, "I'm looking for maternity records from around 1994 to 1995. Any birth registered or reported involving a woman with a facial scar." The clerk squinted at her. "We don't keep photographic memory, madam." Devika slipped a folded note across the counter, enough to warm the man's mood. He looked around, then gestured them behind the desk. "I remember one case," he whispered. "Very strange. Girl delivered a baby late at night. No husband. Scar on her face. She didn't even name the child." Anjali's heart pounded. "What happened to the baby?" "Disappeared," the man said. "Next morning, both gone. But one nurse said a rich car came that night. Government plates. No questions asked." He dug out a faded birth log. "Here. No name. Female. Date, November 19, 1994. Mira's birthday. I need to know where that nurse is now," Anjali said. The man frowned. "She died 2 years ago." Deflated, they walked out. The sun was harsh, the streets noisy. "What now?" Devika asked. "We find someone who remembers," Anjali said. "There's always someone." And someone did. A chaiwala near the hospital remembered the scarred woman. She used to beg outside. Said her name was Gulnaz. One day, she was gone. People said a rich politician took her baby. Anjali scribbled the name. Gulnaz. A name finally. A soul attached to a face. They searched every shelter, every old NGO record, every rumor trail. Days passed. Leads dried. Even Devika was losing hope. "Maybe she's gone," she whispered. "Maybe she's not alive." But Anjali refused to believe that. And then, on their 7th day, an old nun from a forgotten shelter told them. "Yes. Gulnaz lives in the hills now. Near Sitapur. She doesn't talk much. Keeps to herself. But she's alive." Sitapur was quiet. Foggy. The roads narrowed into mud tracks. Trees leaned close like they held secrets. They reached a tiny, crumbling hut at the edge of the village. Smoke rose from a chimney. An old woman sat outside, shelling peas. Her hands were wrinkled, but steady. Her hair was gray. Her scar was still visible. It was her. Gulna's. Anjali stepped forward. Her throat closed. "Ma'am. I think, you sent me this?" She held out the photo. Gulnaz looked at it. Then she looked at Anjali. And nodded once. They sat on the floor inside her hut. No lights, just a dim fire. Devika stayed back, letting them speak. Anjali began gently. "You're Mira's mother." Gulnaz nodded again. "No words. You gave her up." No reaction. Anjali swallowed. "Why?" Finally, Gulnaz spoke. Her voice was like cracked stone. "They told me she died." Anjali froze. "Who told you?" "A man in a white car. Said she didn't survive. Gave me money. Told me to disappear." Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "I believed him. For years, I thought my baby was dead." Anjali's heart broke in slow motion. "But she wasn't," Gulnaz said. "Was she?" Anjali shook her head. "She was raised by a rich family. Lied to all her life. Her name is Mira Kapoor now." Gulnaz flinched. "Kapoor. That name again. You know it?" "My baby's father was a Kapoor." Anjali's mind reeled. "You mean Mira's biological father, he was a—" "Yes," Gulnaz said. "A minister's son. He promised marriage. Then left when I got pregnant. When I refused to abort, his father sent men to make me vanish." "And you survived?" "Barely," she whispered. "But I held her once. Just once. Before they came." There was a long silence. Anjali finally asked, "Why send the photo to me?" Gulnaz looked at her. "I saw your show. On a borrowed phone. The embroidery. The message. I knew, someone finally heard my silence." Tears ran down Anjali's face. "Will you meet her?" she asked. Gulnaz looked away. "No. She won't believe me. She'll hate me. I'm not her mother. I'm just a ghost." Anjali reached out and took her hand. "You're more real than anyone else in her life." Back in Delhi, the world had moved on. Mira Kapoor's brand was tanking. Brands pulled sponsorships. Rumors said she was considering leaving the country for rehabilitation. But when she saw Anjali's message, "I know her. She's alive. She wants nothing. But you deserve to know." There was silence for a day. Then, a reply. "Where?" They met in the hills. No camera crews. No assistants. Just Anjali, Mira, and Gulnaz in the small hut where the past still breathed. Mira stared at the old woman like she was looking into a mirror cracked by time. "I thought my mother was elegant," she said. Gulnaz smiled sadly. "I once was." No sobbing hugs. Just long looks. Trembling hands. 1,000 questions in a single breath. "Why did you give me away?" Mira finally asked. "I didn't," Gulnaz said. "They took you. Then told me you were gone." Mira shook her head. "And I've hated the wrong people all my life." "No," Anjali said softly. "You just didn't know the truth." Later that night, Anjali stood outside the hut, watching the stars. Mira joined her. "I still don't know what to feel," she admitted. "You don't have to feel everything now," Anjali replied. "Let it come slowly." Mira looked at her. "Thank you. For finding her. For not destroying me." "I didn't do it for you," Anjali said honestly. I did it for the truth. As dawn rose over the hills, Anjali knew the story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. A woman forgotten had found voice. A daughter lied to had found roots. And a world obsessed with glamour had been forced to confront something raw, human, and real. But one last question still remained. If Meera had been stolen from her mother, how many other children had disappeared the same way? It had been 3 weeks since Meera Kapoor met her real mother. Since that meeting, she hadn't spoken publicly, not a single interview, post, or statement. The media buzzed with theories. Some said she had gone into hiding. Others claimed she was preparing a tell-all memoir. But the truth was simpler, and much quieter. She was learning to breathe again. Meera now spent her days in the hills, living not in a palace or hotel, but in a tiny cottage near Gulnaz. At first, she stayed silent, just watching her birth mother from a distance. Gulnaz never pushed. She simply waited, peeling vegetables, boiling tea, living each day with the patience only survivors know. And one morning, Meera picked up a knife, sat beside her, and helped slice potatoes. They didn't talk much. But for once, the silence between them was safe. Meanwhile, in Delhi, Anjali had returned to her world, but it no longer felt the same. Her inbox was flooded with letters. Messages from strangers, some praising her bravery, others accusing her of destroying a family. But what caught her eye were the hidden ones. The quiet notes that didn't seek attention. My sister was taken in 1996, no records. I was forced to give up my child because I was poor. There are girls like Meera everywhere. Only no one's telling our stories. Anjali read them with shaking hands. These weren't isolated cases. Meera wasn't an exception. She was a symptom. A symptom of a darker truth. There had been a system, decades old, where powerful families adopted babies under the table. No paperwork. No real adoptions. Just cash, silence, and broken women left behind. The Kapoors weren't the only ones. They were just the ones who got caught. Anjali reached out to Devika. We need to go deeper, she said. This is bigger than one story. Devika looked wary. You sure about this? Exposing the Kapoor family already shook things. If we start digging into other names, this could get dangerous. Anjali nodded. That's why we need help. Together, they partnered with a human rights NGO. Anjali offered full access to her research, letters, and footage. In return, the NGO opened their archive of buried complaints, cases dismissed without investigation, files sealed by recommendation from above. Patterns began to emerge. Same doctors. Same hospitals. Same agents. Same luxury cars. And every time, poor, unmarried, or teenage mothers disappeared from records while newborns found homes. It had been happening since the 1980s. Some of these children were now CEOs, influencers, politicians. And most of them had no idea. In the hills, Meera watched the news quietly. Headlines exploded with Anjali's new report. The Silenced Womb, India's Secret Child Trade. Subtitle, What Money Bought and Mothers Lost. Photos, testimonies, files, all real. All raw. And for the first time, people didn't just click, they listened. Some cried. Some denied. Others called it a war on the elite. But the most surprising reaction came from Meera herself. She turned to Gulnaz and asked, "Can you help me sew something?" Gulnaz blinked. "You want to, sew?" Meera smiled. "Yes. Something small. For the ones who never got a voice." 3 weeks later, Meera appeared in public. No makeup. No team. No stage. Just her, standing before a crowd at a community center in Lucknow, wearing a simple kurta stitched with faded thread. She held up a piece of fabric, a small quilt, each square embroidered with a single name. No last names. Just firsts. Names of babies who vanished from hospital records. Some still alive. Some never found. Some known only by broken mothers and silent tears. This is not fashion, Mira said. This is memory. This is stitching broken histories back together. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. The crowd did it for her. That day, something shifted. The media that once worshipped her for glamour now began praising her for grit. People who once mocked her called her brave. But Mira didn't care about applause. She cared about the girls like her, and the mothers like Gulnaz. She founded an initiative, Project Gul, to track lost birth records, support vulnerable mothers, and reunite stolen children with their roots. Within 2 months, over 600 women came forward. Some still believed their babies had died. But now they questioned everything. And some found closure after decades of silence. Anjali sat across from Mira at the cottage one evening, months after it all began. "You've changed," she said. Mira shook her head. "No. I've just peeled off the part that was pretending." She handed Anjali a small stitched square. On it, the name Ariv. "Another one?" Anjali asked. "A boy," Mira said softly. "His mother thought he died during delivery. But I found an old nurse who remembered a rich businessman's wife leaving that hospital with a baby the next morning." She looked at Anjali. "Do you know what the scariest part is?" Anjali waited. "I used to think wealth meant protection," Mira whispered. "But now I know, it often just means better walls to hide the sins behind." And then came the final twist. It arrived in a plain envelope. No return address. Inside, a DNA report. Anjali stared at it. Her hands trembled. She had submitted Mira's DNA weeks ago to a private lab, matching it against known adoptee databases and missing person cases. Not for publicity. For truth. And the report revealed something no one had expected. Mira had a brother. Biological. Same mother. Same father. Born 2 years earlier. And he was still alive. Adopted by another powerful family. Also renamed. Also unaware. Also lied to. Anjali drove to Mira personally. She didn't email. Didn't text. When she handed over the envelope, Mira read it slowly. She went silent for a long time. "Do I tell him?" she asked finally. "That's your choice," Anjali said. "But he deserves the truth, just like you did." Mira nodded. Then folded the paper and walked back inside. Weeks passed. Quietly. And then one day, a man in his early 30s arrived at Gulnaz's door. He looked like Mira, same jawline, same eyes. He didn't speak. Just stood there, holding the DNA report, eyes wide, as Gulnaz opened the door with trembling hands. She gasped. He knelt. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing for the son she never knew she had carried. The silence broke. And this time, it screamed with love. Epilogue, the lesson. In the end, the story wasn't about betrayal. It wasn't even about wealth versus poverty. It was about truth. And what happens when truth is denied long enough to turn love into legend, and wounds into whispers. Mira Kapoor learned that no amount of silk can hide scars that run through the soul. Gulnaz discovered that even the faintest memory can return as a roaring storm. Anjali found that journalism is not about headlines, it's about giving people back their names. And the world, watching from behind their screens, learned this. When you silence a mother, you don't just take her voice. You erase generations. But one whisper, one photo, one stitch, one truth, is enough to bring it all back.